It's been exactly 10 days since Apple released all the WWDC session videos, and I've been watching them non-stop. I watched over 50 sessions now. I participated in group labs, in one-on-one labs. Basically, I was trying to gather together all the infos out there to make a summary video for you. This is the first time I'm doing a video like this, and this is my best of WWDC 25, a developer's perspective. I'm Cihat Gündüz, an indie developer who develops apps for all Apple platforms, and you can find me with my handle @Cihat on like Blue Sky, Mastodon, etc. I will go through all the developer APIs that are new and that I found interesting that could be relevant to app developers. At the end, I'll also put everything together and give you my overall impression on this year's WWDC and compare it to other years. So this video is structured into these parts, starting with developer tools, then going into App Store Connect, and then machine learning and AI, which is exciting this year, and of course Swift and SwiftUI as every year. And this year a lot of focus on VisionOS, so we'll have a separate section for that, and we'll end with platform features that are for other kinds of integrations. Please also check out the WWDC Notes website, where the community, like 10 people so far this year, have contributed over 30 notes, and there are hundreds of notes from the past years, and contributions are always welcome, so please join our effort. Let's get started with developer tools. Well, we will talk about Xcode, string catalogs, and icon composer. Let's start with Xcode. When you open Xcode this year, you see this start page with an open quickly menu that replaces what we had before, which was the Command-Shift-O shortcut. Now you have it as a start page. We also get like pinned tabs. Haven't tested that yet, but it sounds like you get more control over which tabs are currently open, which I really like. Then we get better search inside Xcode, which works more like Google search, so you can find things easier even if you don't really exactly remember what the exact code was, like here in this example. And we also have the new playground macro. So what you can do now is, if you love SwiftUI previews like I do, you can now use something like SwiftUI previews, but for any data. You don't need a SwiftUI view. You just need any, you can put any data in there. It works like Swift Playgrounds used to work before, but it's right in your project. So you can use your models, you can use everything you have there, which is really awesome. It's going to be super useful. And as you can see in the screenshots, they even try to provide like more media for types they know, like CL location coordinates. Then the big thing, we have finally Swift Assist, or how it's called now, ChatGPT. Okay, ChatGPT is not from Apple, but yeah, this is better than Swift Assist. I mean, we were all waiting for Swift Assist, but Apple did the right thing and chose to use a really good and sophisticated model instead of trying to bring in their own local model, which probably would not have been as good as things like ChatGPT. And now it's right there in Xcode. You can ask it any question, you can edit your code, basically like Cursor. If you've used your Cursor before, this is basically it. Right in Xcode. And we get ChatGPT for free. I don't know if there are limits, but I assume there are at some point. But the cool thing is you can also right-click things, also similar, very similar to Cursor, and ask anything you want to ask, or do some common actions like document or explain this code for me. You can also generate actually a playground, so it will use this type and like add this playground macro we saw before, so you get a nice preview with some sample data, which is really useful. The cool thing of this integration, I find, is that you can basically go back in time, which I really like. As you can see here, it's a bit like Git commits, where you can like go back to old commits, but it's not actually committing. It's like using its own system, and you can go back in time when AI did something weird. And it's not restricted to only ChatGPT. You can add your, for example, Anthropic key there, and then you can use Claude models as well. So you don't have to stick with ChatGPT. You can even use local models if you prefer to do that. The UI looks like this. So when you start a new conversation, you basically say which model you want to use. And I really like that Apple has finally added AI right into Xcode it is going to make us way faster as developers. I mean, we've been using AI in many situations, but we're copying and pasting to a web browser or using another Mac app or using Cursor or something like that. But having it right in Xcode is really awesome. And I think they also integrated very well. I've already tested it a little bit. It really works well. A few bugs, of course, but I'm sure they'll figure it out over the next few weeks. Let's get on to the next topic, which is localization in Xcode. And string catalogs are the new way to localize things in Xcode. And this also gets some AI treatment because, as you can see in the screenshot, the comments, which many people, like many developers, actually don't write because they just don't have the time. And developers are lazy. I'm lazy too. But now we can get generated comments from Xcode directly using the context of basically the translation key, where you can see basically from the code how it's being used. And you can turn this on for all new keys that are added to the string catalog by setting this automatically generate string catalog comments at the screen you can see there below in the settings. So please turn it on. It's going to just be useful for translators or tools or AI that also use your string catalog to localize your app, like my app Translate Kit does. So turn on generated comments to get more context for better translations. And there is actually also another thing related to localization in Xcode now. On the left, you can see how string catalogs work right now. You just write your string like good morning WWDC in a SwiftUI text view, and it gets extracted to the string catalog. But there is also a way to add them manually to your string catalog, and then the usage is a bit harder, but now this year Apple is introducing referencing like symbols, basically generated symbols for strings, so you can reference them in your code with auto-completion. So you can do, for example, if you have a key named greeting, you can actually do dot and you get the greeting as auto-completion, which is awesome. It's actually something I had requested as well as a feature, and actually they have referenced my feedback code in the Xcode release notes. So obviously I was basically part of making this possible. How this works is you can right-click any key in your string catalog that was extracted, and you can also convert it to basically a manual string, in which case basically what happens is it replaces the string, like the text you have in your code, with a reference, and converts also the extracted string in your string catalog to manually managed one. But at that point, it was already extracted. So as long as you don't want to delete it, this is totally fine. And this screen basically showed you like when to use it. It's not like you should use it all the time, but you can use it when you want to use it. And it can be useful for frameworks and Swift packages, for example. And you can see there's also convert symbols to strings, so it also works the other way around if Xcode could figure out basically where your string was used. To use this, you have to turn on generate string catalog symbols in your build settings. If you're in an existing project, it might not be turned on. In new projects, it will be on by default. Another localization related change that I really like actually is that locale.preferred languages will be deprecated in the future. You should instead use locale.preferred locales. The difference is with the locales, you actually get an instance, an object that has lots of fields like language code, script, calendar, etc. So you have way more useful direct fields you can access, and you can get, for example, if you need the language, you can get the language directly instead of using your preferred languages just like that. It saves a lookup. Like there is a lookup you have to do. You can do it with the above API as well, but this is just nicer. And they added also new calendar identifiers because there are new regional calendar formats like Korean, for example. And yeah, this is also something to consider when doing localization. I really like the localization changes. I think they're just like filling gaps, and they're just making life nicer. And the extraction part didn't get many changes, but one more thing that I forgot to mention is in string catalogs, finally, you can now multi-select entries. So if you want to generate a comment for the extraction of the generation of comments happens for newly added keys, as I just showed you if you turn the setting on. But what about your existing keys? You can actually right click them and press generate comment, and you can also just sort in your string catalog all your strings so that you can see the ones without comment multi-select all of them, right-click and say generate comments, and it will fill out all the comments for you. So I really recommend you doing that so you get better translations. Next, the next topic we want to talk about is Icon Composer. And actually this year we're getting this new template, which is slightly adjusted from compared to the old one. And for watchOS in particular, this is adjusted in a way that you don't have to resize anything. Basically, the watchOS one, which is a circle, now has a new size of 188, so 1088 pixels. And by doing it like that and making it a little bit larger, you don't have to scale your icon anymore. You just copy and paste your icon to the watchOS format and it just works. I really like that. And we have, obviously, we have new kinds of icons. We have all these styles that you can see on the screen right now, including the very new clear style, which has already caused some discussion, let's put it like that. But as developers, we have to support them all for our apps to look nice, our app icons to look nice on the home screens. The cool thing is now all of these variants are packaged into one file, which is called .icon, and the Icon Composer, the new app that ships with Xcode, will do this for us. So we can just save it like that and then import it into Xcode. The Icon Composer itself, it has lots of nice features that are relevant for app icon creation. For example, it supports, because of these new, nuanced lighting effects in the system, it's really important that you have different layers in your app icon. And the different layers, you can see them here. You can basically put even multiple images into one layer, and you can have up to 4 layers. These are all the things you can adjust for each layer within the Icon Composer. You can add blur, shadow, and a specular effect, which depends on basically how you're holding your phone. So it's not always going to be light from the top left, but it's going to change. You can also change opacity and translucency. And you should really play around with these values. You can edit them right on the right side of the Icon Composer app just by selecting a layer, and then you can play around and directly see what things look like. It's also important that you can preview all the different styles without much work. You just press the platform or the appearance you want to have, light, dark, or clear. And the clear itself also has like a tinted style, dark and light in itself. So make sure to check those out and test with those as well. And here you can see within the preview you have there, at the top you can change the background, so you can see when you're using the clear style how your app icon would look like with different backgrounds. You can even add the templates, so you can basically compare it with your template if everything looks all right. And you can change the angle of the lighting coming in, so you can really see how your app looks like in this nice preview in the Icon Composer. So what do I think about the new app icons? I really like that they are layered now, because I liked it when it was first introduced in tvOS, where we have also up to 3 layers. Then on VisionOS, we also got 3, and I think, up to 3 layers again. And there it makes a lot of sense, right? You get like a real 3D experience, so it makes sense to have some depth to it. With the new lighting system, I think it makes a lot of sense on the other platforms, especially iOS and iPadOS as well. So I really like it. Of course, the clear format, it can be a little bit hard if you have a very specific icon to get that look really good there. But if you're creating a new icon, you should just use these layers as they're intended. And I think it will just work out of the box thanks to Icon Composer, which I really love. What I don't understand though is, why does Icon Composer not support VisionOS? tvOS, okay, it has a completely different shape. It might not work with the same grid system, but VisionOS, it looks pretty much like watchOS, and watchOS now has up to 4 layers. Why not just add the support for VisionOS? I don't really understand it. I don't know why they did this, but maybe they will introduce it later. I hope so. Okay, let's continue to the next topic, which is App Store Connect. In App Store Connect, we're going to talk about tags, about accessibility labels that are new, about analytics changes with lots of more stats, and about something you might be underestimating called managed assets. Let's get started. So here we have App Store tags. They look like this, and they will be basically AI decided and assigned to your app automatically. And you can see how it looks like on your App Store page, or they are basically meant to also help users discover your app. So this is how it looks like when your users might be seeing it from the App Store app. And it also looks like is shown under your app icon in like a list views, like you can see on the right. The thing is, because it's AI generated and not really managed by actual humans, I think they said that they're going to have some correction there, but you can basically opt out of any tag that you feel like does not really fit your app well. So that's a way how you can have some level of control, which I really like. And the same goes for reviews. There is now a new review summary, as you have seen. And again, you can go into App Store Connect. You can report a concern when you think the summary does not really reflect the reviews of your app well. Next, this is the third one, is accessibility nutrition labels. This is another change on your apps page, basically on the App Store. And this is really cool. If your app already supports some accessibility, now you can make your app stand out thanks to these labels. But especially this is important to people who are actually affected and need these controls or these tested features, because you should basically test your app and just fill out which kind of accessibility features you do support. And I think this is a huge deal for people who need these things, because I can imagine Apple actually even introducing, I don't know if they have it yet, but they could introduce like filters. You can just say like, hey, I need VoiceOver, for example, and you will only see results when you do search with apps that actually support that. So this is a really cool thing, and a good reminder for us developers to test our apps specific on these different things. So if you haven't done that yet and you have the time, please invest it. It's going to be useful for you and for many people out there. Another thing that happened on App Store Connect is that we finally have some, I would say, better navigation and way more useful stats. So the new navigation, the new place you will find the analytics, this is not live yet, it will be live later this year, is you will find the analytics right within your app. So it like the tab bar analytics entry is going to move on to the apps, because in the tab bar, when you were pressing analytics, you would see your apps anyways. You would have to select your app. So they moved it to a way more natural place. And you get more stats, like, for example, finally, monthly recurring revenue, MRR. It's right there on the top right, as you can see. And yeah, there are so many new statistics. And with new statistics, it makes sense also to have new APIs. So if anyone was using App Store Connect APIs, like I am in my Freemium Kit app, that's what I'm going to use in the Freemium Kit app, these new APIs, and finally have some nice statistics for everyone using it. Another cool thing that was always waiting for, again on the API as well, is finally we can provide offer codes for things that are not subscriptions, or not auto-renewing subscriptions. In my app Translator, for example, I have AI tokens that people can buy, but I cannot offer codes to get, like, for the WWDC special event, I wanted to have an offer code to make that cheaper, but it was not possible. And finally, we're getting it, and this is really exciting. So the App Store Connect changes, I think, they go all in the right direction. They add at the places we were missing and restructure things a little bit. And specifically the analytics, the MRR part, this was long overdue, and I'm really happy we finally have it. Next topic, we want to talk about asset packs. So what is an asset pack? This is a feature that you can find here in the test flight. It's shown in test flight, but you also have it in production. This is not a test only thing. Basically what you can do now is you can create something called asset pack, and then you can basically pass it to your app on App Store Connect and then load it in your app's code. So you're not putting it into your app's bundle. Instead, you're like basically submitting it as like some extra resources on App Store Connect for your app. And then, as you can see here, like compared to other options, on the left you can see passing resources as part of your app bundle. It's also like restricted to up to 4 GB. Then we had on-demand resources, which are deprecated now because they're replaced by managed background assets. And as you can see here, it is giving us also more space. We now have 200 GB of content we can provide as part of our resources. And this is, I mean, obviously it sounds like it's something for games and or maybe for media-based apps, but I would really make you think about it a little bit more, because as you can see in this table, you can see these things are asset-only updates. They auto-update. So you can basically pass new updated assets for your app, and they get updated in the background for your app automatically. And this works like this, so you can even test different versions of your resources or files or whatever you want to put into your asset packs. And you can have a different version on internal beta, a different version on external beta. And then once you're ready with your tests and in like the test flight build, you can just say, okay, I want to submit this to the App Store, and it will become part of your production data. And please note, this works in a way that when you pass it to production, your app does not get up or does not need to get updated. So make sure that like you don't pass any new assets that your old app versions will not work with. This is more like only additional things. Like if your app is expecting a specific file in the asset pack, you should still have it, maybe update it if needed. But the real cool use case, I think Apple may also not have considered for this, is remote configuration. We can finally do remote configuration by just passing a JSON file, for example, where you just have some different colors for a different theme, or maybe even you have your localization that you load dynamically, or maybe you want to do A/B testing, all kinds of things. Or maybe you have some just simple images that you're showing in some screen, like in your paywall, and you want to change that based on if it's Eastern or if it's Christmas. All kinds of things that you want to remotely configure without an app update, you can now do by passing an asset pack and use the managed app assets, because these things update in the background automatically. I think it's using the same system as the app update system on App Store, because it's all happening through App Store as well. But yeah, I think this is a really cool use case, and it's a bit involved to get this done because you have to do this specific format, but I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to definitely write a blog post on my blog. If you want to check that out, please make sure to follow my blog on flying.dev as well. But let's move on to the next topic, which is machine learning and AI, which obviously was a big topic this year. So we'll be talking about foundation models and SpeechAnalyzer. Let's take a look. Foundation models has the great advantage that it's on device, which makes it automatically private, and also no delays to any web servers. So it's always readily available and it's built in, so it's not going to be adding 1 GB or something like that to your app, which are great advantages. All the things that it can do is listed here. I'm not going to read them out loud, but you can see there are a bunch of things you can do with it, which doesn't mean it can do everything because it's still an on-device model. But the usage is really, really nice. You can see here again the playground macro that we saw earlier being in use, and you can totally use that with like for basically trying out and getting a good prompt for whatever your use case is by just loading your app's actual data. Like you can do these playgrounds right within your app's code. So you have all your models available, everything is there. And you can prompt and play around right in Xcode and see the results live on the right side, which I really, really like. Another thing I actually love about the API design of Foundation Model, they really got that completely right, is this generable macro. Because gone are the times, and I've been through this, where you try to get an AI to generate some kind of codable JSON that you can then like map to your codable struct and have right in your code and work with, because sometimes it failed. And writing the JSON schema to get that right was also like a lot of work. And this is all done for you with Foundation Model. You just write your struct that you want to have. You just say like add generable. You can add a guide for each field, so it's more clear to AI what this field is about. You can even add restrictions like this. In here, you can see search terms must only have 4 or exactly 4 elements in it. So you can control a lot. And the foundation models guarantee you that you will get a struct of this type, which is really awesome. For example, here you can see you have a prompt, and the API is also super simple. You just start a session, which is not shown here, but you'll see later. And you just say, session, please respond to this prompt. And the session also like knows what was previously said, just like in ChatGPT and other AI tools. And you just pass the type you want to have as a result, and it gives you that type. It's that easy. These are all the fields and the types that you can add into your structs. These include all the usual things like string, int, float, double, bool, even arrays of strings, and even relations. So if you have another type that also conforms to generable, you can just reference it here and even arrays of relations. So if itinerary, for example, or our itinerary is basically referencing itself in an array, so you can even have basically recursive models like shown here. So all of this works without any problems. And what I also really love is because sometimes you don't want to wait. Sometimes your prompt just takes some time. And if that is the case, you can actually get partially generated results. Like if you have code like this, it will send you the results in as they come in. And the cool thing about this is when you have these partial data, you can actually update your UI with the partial data, which they have shown off. And I really love this. This is really awesome. The best part about it is the partially generated part is just automatically generated by the macro. You don't have to do anything, and all the fields in there are optionals, so they fill in over time, and they fill in order as well. So order of your properties do matter. Next, we have another thing. So you just saw the generable type, which you can only use if you already know the output data format during like development, during compile time. But sometimes you may give your users more like dynamic control about what they want to create or generate. In this case, you can also use something called dynamic schema, where you basically give it a schema and it generates a type generated content. It's a bit more involved, but it's still doable. It's not too complicated. And if you need that, it's totally possible as well. There are some built-in guardrails to ensure safety, both when the users enter their prompt, so the prompt is checked, and also when the response is returned, the response is checked also, and you might get an error if any guardrail violations happen. And I actually asked some engineers about this, and this does not involve things like, I don't know, copywriting or something like that. So this is really only about safety, and I think they have not gone too far with this, which I really like. Always keep in mind that the on-device model that is shipped in foundation models is just 3 billion parameters trained, so it's way smaller than usual server-based models that we're working with. So the limitations are real, so make sure to not expect too much. And if you come into problems, try to break down your your prompt into smaller, simpler tasks, and don't even try math problems or code generations. Obviously, Apple engineers have tried that and didn't work very well. So yeah, you can save yourself some time there. You should definitely tell your model always how much you want as the response, because if you want to have like a small name, you should make that clear. Otherwise, you might get too long text. There is also a limit to the tokens you can pass to the model. So 4060 and 96 is the maximum of input and output together. So you might run into context limits quite fast. And you can check the context length with the transcript, which is basically a string that contains all the things that are part of what the model is parsing. And the tip Apple engineers have given is that you can just use a summarizer, which summarizes the first session, and just start a new session passing in the summary of your last session so you can continue discussion. Another really cool feature that is already built into foundation models, and this is really an awesome first version, I really love it, is tool calling. And tool calling is basically a way to reach out into the world from this AI. And the AI will do that automatically. It can do multiple tools in parallel. And the tool can look something like this. For example, if you want to get make your AI able to get some like current weather information, you just create a get weather tool. And you have to pass it during initialization of your session, but the implementation is super simple. You just have to provide an arguments type that is again generable, which are the inputs that the AI is going to give your tool, and then your tool does whatever it wants. And you can really do anything you want to do inside the call function. You could, for example, reach out to the WeatherKit API like here. You could also create another AI model that starts a new session. So you have a specific, like you basically have one AI that reaches out into other small AIs. So they all work together. You could have like an AI team basically. Or you can also reach out to a server AI model. You could do anything you want. You could do some lookup in private information like contacts, like calendar. Since this is all on device, this is all no problem for like privacy. And this is, I think, the big strength about the foundation models, apart from being super simple to use. This API design, God, I love whoever, like all the engineers at Apple who worked on this, really thank you very much. This is such a nice API to use. It's the best AI API I've seen so far, and I'm going to use it all the time. And I hope the models are going to improve over time, not just the size. Like obviously 3 billion parameters can only do so much, but I can imagine like with newer devices, we even get like on-device models that are larger and more capable on like newer devices in the future. I'm pretty sure that that could happen. Another thing that could happen is that we get access to private cloud compute through the same API. Since these are async APIs already, I don't think it would make a huge difference to like the speed and delay, but obviously like privacy and not the privacy part, but you could do so much more with a larger AI that we can use. And I hope that Apple will find a way to give us developers another free but server-based AI model in the future. I'm really looking forward to that next year. But for now, I'm going to, figure out all the things I can do with this current API. And I have many ideas. For example, I'm doing a lot of parsing in many of my apps, like in TranslateKit, I'm parsing string catalogs and other files. In another project I have, Pledia Organizer is the name, I'm parsing basically names of files. I'm trying to figure out like from the file name, what is the year, what is this, what is that? And I'm using regular expressions all the time. And I have a feeling, and this is not always working, like regular expressions, I can only give them like specific structures that I know of, but sometimes structures differ slightly from my regex and then it's not working anymore. I think an AI model would be much better in these kinds of tasks, and I'm looking forward to never writing any parsers again. So I hope it's going to work like that, but I am pretty optimistic actually. Let's move on to the next topic, and that is SpeechAnalyzer. This is a machine learning, or maybe also a little bit AI, like a more generative AI including stuff, but it's basically a way better version of an older API. And this is the SpeechAnalyzer API that you can combine optionally with a speech transcriber and get awesome results out of it. This is way faster than the old model, and it can do more longer audio as well and do also conversational speak. So you should really try it out. If you've already been using the older audio APIs, this is just going to be way better. And you even get like partial results like with the other AI model we saw before. But this time how it works is you basically get time codes of the part that has been parsed and like transcribed basically. And if you get the same time code again, it basically means you get a better version of a previously partial result. And that's how it works, and you get it in these 10 languages you can see on the screen, which is awesome that we get a lot of languages off the bat, and I'm sure they're going to add more languages over time. So SpeechAnalyzer, if you're using it already, audio APIs, you should just migrate to it. It's also on device, so there's no delay problem with the API before. So if you were not using that before because of privacy reasons or delay reasons, now it's on device. Next, and this is the big topic that all us developers really care about, are Swift and SwiftUI, and we got a lot this year. First off, we're going to talk about concurrency with Swift 6, and then finally WebView. Then we get to SF symbols, and then we have additions to charts library with 3D charts. But before we get to concurrency, there is actually a really nice news, which is that macro build performance has been significantly improved for like third-party macros like I have done in my TranslateKit SDK library. And that is thanks to no longer building Swift syntax. Like the build Swift syntax step here is no longer there in the new version, as long as the version of the Swift syntax library of whoever uses this for creating macros is specifying a tagged version, which is most versions. So you always have tagged versions usually. So basically they have a pre-built binary now and no longer like 1 minute, 2 minute waiting up upon first build, which is awesome news. We can finally we can use macros. And I think this is going to be huge actually, because the macro ecosystem was not really flourishing that much. mostly because of the Swift syntax build time. And this problem being solved, I think, can really make more macros come into, and we've seen the playground macro. You can do so much with macros, and they also have the I think bundle macro now, so you don't have to no longer say bundle.module in Swift packages. You can just put hashtag bundle there. The macro will just figure it out for you. Another new nice convenience thing is that notification center types now are basically typed. So you get like .keyboard will show, and you even get type results like the keyboard state start frame. You no longer have to read everything out from like dictionaries or things like that, saving us from many different typos and yeah, a lot of code as well. So the types now look like this. You can either have a main act like notification center.main actor message, which means you can only observe to that on the main actor, or you can say async message, so you can do it everywhere where things are done asynchronously. And yeah, not much to say about that. Just nice that we get that. Observation gets now a way to subscribe to observations yourself. So SwiftUI was using the new observation tools to basically, if you made your type observable, you could pass it to SwiftUI and SwiftUI would just observe. And now you can observe yourself using the observations API shown here. And whenever the values change, it basically gets re-executed. So you can always return a new value, and the values parameter you can see on the screen gets always stays always up to date. So you can use it in like an async sequence later, for example, because it's basically returning an async sequence, which it's like an array that gets updated over time. You can think of it like that. And this is really nice for many things, many places where you have APIs, where you have either already some data you want to subscribe to, or you want to create some new observation subscription model. And you should definitely try out observations for that. Next, we have concurrency. And oh boy, Swift 6 was released last year at WWDC, and I was personally excited, but then trying it out in apps, like everybody was like, why do we get so many warnings and errors? And they finally fixed it. They listened to the developers and they finally fixed it. So now we have approachable concurrency, which you can turn on in your projects alongside default actor isolation. So how this is going to work is it's basically going to convert your concurrent app or supposedly concurrent app into a single threaded app by basically injecting add main actor everywhere for you. And as you can see on the bottom also, you can now finally say my type conforms to a protocol like exportable only when it's being used on the main thread. But even that is going to be implicitly done for you. So turn this on if you don't use concurrency all the time or haven't migrated to Swift 6 already. This is going to save us a lot of error handling, rewrite, and stuff like that. So way less warnings when you move to Swift 6 right now, finally. And if you want to use concurrency though, for example, you want to render some UI part in a background thread or something like that, you can opt in to concurrency by just adding the add concurrent property basically to your function, and then it will not be main actor specific. And I think this is a huge deal for people moving to Swift 6. And Swift 6 has been introducing so many things like typed errors, finally, or improvements to all kinds of things, macros, speed, performance, and you couldn't basically get like all the advantages because you couldn't migrate to it due to all the warnings and errors that are basically like by default turned on. And finally, you can fix that and just like in apps, in normal apps, finally fix that and move on to Swift 6 without big hiccups. I hope. I haven't tested it out, but I mean, the main problem was the main actor thing, and that being the default now, it's huge. I love it. Next up, we're going to talk about a bit of the UI design with Liquid Glass that we got this year. And if you adopt Liquid Glass with normal SwiftUI views, you just get everything out of the box. You don't have to do much. But if you do have like custom views and you want to add the glass effect, that's how you do it in SwiftUI. You can add it anywhere. And if you do want to also color that, like it is actually possible to tint the glass as well. And you should use it for main actions and stuff like that. Don't overuse it, but for something like a reply button like down here, it makes a lot of sense to basically highlight this button as a main action of the screen. So you should do that. There's also a way to, like especially on iPad and on macOS, you have this new sidebar, and by default it will be like white behind it and it will look a bit weird. So make sure that if you have imagery in your views, to add the background extension effect, which will not crop your or resize your image in any way. It's more like a mirroring of the image behind the sidebar, just to make it look nicer. And also when when you scroll sideways through scroll views, it will also go behind the sidebar. So make sure to use that for 26 OS editions, so iOS, macOS, everything. Also new is the new kind of tab view that has been changed in its UI design, and the search has also moved down, as you surely have seen. But you can also add now a tab view bottom accessory. So you can basically say, I want to add some view that is part or an accessory to the tab view. And you can even combine that with inline placement when you scroll up. So you can say like tab bar minimize behavior, make it on scroll down. So the tab bar minimizes, and then your accessory gets basically inlined into the tab bar space, like it's done in the music app, as you can see here. And you can adopt that in your apps as well. Another thing that has changed is that if you put confirmation dialogues and stuff like that right inside toolbars and attach that to buttons in there, that they will basically show modally in place. And inside toolbars, you can now add toolbar spacers, which either can be fixed like here, so you get like a fixed space between the different things, or you can make it flexible. So if you want to say like, okay, I have a space in the middle and I want the buttons on the left and right of that to be like far away from each other, then you can make it flexible. And we also have shared background visibility. So if you basically say, I want to have two buttons inside the same toolbar and don't want to show the glass background, then you can basically say, I want to make that background hidden. Then we have another thing in the toolbar. I don't really know if this is a new API. I feel like we had badge elsewhere, but maybe what's new is that it's also now being rendered right inside toolbars. It might have also worked in the past, but they showed it off. So yeah, if you didn't know, that's a reminder now. What I really like, I'm really happy about this, is on macOS, finally we can add symbols, SF symbols or any kinds of icons to entries inside the menu bar. I was missing that. I was actually cheating and adding it as text. So there is a way to do that, but it's really hacky. It's not really, I didn't really like it. It was really a workaround. And finally we can add them, or they are basically supported out of the box. And since we get them on iPadOS as well, it works on both iPadOS and macOS. And a little tip that they gave here is that when you have multiple actions like here that are like copy symbol, copy name, image, etc., just put one SF symbol on the first item and let the others empty. So you basically have a feeling of these belong together and are basically the same action, which I think works really well, other than like either repeating the icon or trying to figure out different icons, even though you basically have the same icon and the perfect icon here already. Another thing that was added is that the sliders now can have steps and a neutral value from which the steps go out. So like you can see here, the value starts at this value that they put there, and you can move it from there to the left and right. I think this is awesome because it's going to enable many properties that were not possible before, where you had to create custom views, and now you can just use the built-in slider. Another thing that I didn't quite 100% understand what it's for, but I think it's related to consistency and lighting, is you can create a glass effect container, and inside the container you can have these glass effect IDs, and then you can make them basically connect to each other. But yeah, like I said, I'm not 100% sure about that, but it looks really cool for this, yeah, I would say Android style UI, which I think we're gonna see more in the iOS world now as well. And that's all the changes that I want to talk about regarding the UI. Quickly about Liquid Glass, I really like the new design personally. Obviously, there are some, maybe legibility issues, but I feel like Apple might figure that out over the beta period. But even if not, like if you really have the issues, you can just try to make the background a little bit, more milky by just turning on accessibility settings. I personally can read everything just fine in most cases. In some cases, like I said, I think they're going to figure it out with some specific background images. But yeah, I think it's really nice and it really gives a fresh look. And the most interesting thing to me is that the entire systems look really unified now. Like we were having quite big differences between macOS and the iOS iPadOS world, in my opinion. And now iPadOS getting more features from macOS, and macOS actually getting a lot of design elements and design language from iPadOS. I think the systems look way more, consistent now. And I have the feeling that they introduce a new design language that just works everywhere. Also on VisionOS and potential other future AR, VR devices. And that's, I think, really a good thing. And I also really like that it's basically this, I don't know how to say, but it feels like vibrant and also, I'm not a good designer, or I'm not Johnny Ive. Like I can't use these amazing words, but I have this feeling that it just feels fresh and nice and modern. So maybe it's also roundings. I was a little bit, I'm just happier with the design language that we have now, and it also makes our content shine more, because like if you have nice content in your app, it's just gonna like look through everything, and that's always been something I liked. So yeah, I personally really love it, and as a SwiftUI developer, I don't have to do much, and it will just work. Let's continue with small changes to text editors. Finally, we can have formatting inside text editors. All we have to do is replace as you can see, the binding here, the type is replaced from string to attributed string, and everything just works, which is awesome. So users can just use bold text, italic, whatever. And finally, I know that Paul Hudson was waiting for this and rooting for this for years. We finally have WebView inside SwiftUI. So this might sound like crazy to someone who's not an Apple platform developer, but finally we can show web pages inside our apps using the latest Apple technology. Like it was possible using like the compatibility from the older technology called UIKit, but having it in SwiftUI, it's such a big deal, and was integrated really nicely. So you just have WebView, you just pass it the URL, it's doing a loading for you. You can also use on the model layer, you can also use a new type called web page, which will give you more control and more fields and stuff you can do with, and you can move the logic into your model layer by using this and just passing it to your WebView. And you can see that here, for example, we're doing the page loading using a URL request inside our view model, so we don't have to keep it in our view. And you even have more options, like more fields and properties inside the web page you can deal with. And you can even pass and call JavaScript code right from the web page type. So there's really a lot you can do there, and it's all possible now inside Swift and SwiftUI natively, which I really like. This is a really cool addition that we all have been waiting for a long time. And another cool thing is that you can even scroll inside views using the web page, and you can just the web view itself. So you can just say on change, please scroll to this position. And it will also works the other way around. So when a user scrolls to a specific position, you can also get informed about it using WebView on scroll geometry change API. And combining those, you can build AIs or UIs like this, where on the left you can have your UI inside your app that shows the different like headers and stuff like that from your articles, for example. You can press them to scroll to a different place in your article, or when the user scrolls, you can also mark your header. So you can have like synced UI and synced sidebar or extra information metadata for your web pages or HTML files. And I really like that. I really like the way they integrated it. It's really easy to use. Looks like that, at least. The JavaScript integration is really nice. You can even use a web page without a web view. Like you can do loading and stuff like that. As far as I understood, at least, you can do everything without any views as well, which I really like. I think that's going to be also useful for like fetching stuff in the background. But let's move on to SF symbols, where we got some nice like animations there. As you can see, you can have like a download button that you can slowly fill, or a temperature, or like this was a yoga example. And all you have to do is you have to, when you have an SF symbol in code, just say symbol effect draw on, and then you can just control if the animation is active. And it's also usable in UIKit and AppKit. And yeah, this is just a nice small addition to SF symbols. And I see that it was a lot of work to add this to all the, I think 8,000 or something like that symbols. And like on all the places where you would expect a specific kind of animation, it works exactly like that. You can also animate like different glyphs step by, like not all at the same time, but step by step. So there are a lot of options there. You can even create your own ones, which was shown in the session. So if you want to learn how to do that, if you're creating SF symbols yourself, you can add the animation possibilities there too, which looks a bit like you're basically working with a vector drawing app, like, I don't know, Adobe Illustrator, and just showing how to draw things. So not many people might use that, but it's cool that it's integrated right into SF symbols. Next, Swift Data. Swift Data finally received a feature that basically was possible in core data. So finally you can have subclassing. For example, here you can see that there's a trip type with 3 fields, and then there are 2 different kind of trips. And personal trip and business trip make a lot of sense because they are an is-a relationship. A personal trip is a trip. Business trip also is a trip. You should really only use that if this is a relationship is the case. And the way you use it is very simple. You just say, okay, this is my trip type, and then just a new type that conforms to trip, and you can just have new fields in there. Yeah, really easy like that. And what you should not do is, when you have common fields across different types that are not related, like a person and a trip, they are not related, but both have a name, you should really use a protocol and not subclassing, because the queries that are made actually, when you use subclassing and you can actually query for all trips, then it's not going to make a lot of sense when you or named models. When you query for all named models, it's not going to make sense to query at the same time for person and trip. It's just gonna, like, you're just gonna run into different kinds of problems. So really only use subclassing if that makes sense. Use protocols otherwise for like the same kind of behavior. That's what protocols are for. Then we have some additions to Swift charts. In Swift charts, we now finally have chart 3D. So you can have 3D charts. You can see there's now a Z-axis where you can pass some like extra values now, and also Z-axis label. And you can actually change the camera placement into a 3D chart. And this is you might not see, but this is a 3D chart, but looked at from the front. So it looks exactly like the 2D chart with only the first 2 fields, and you can programmatically change that. This is the default like angle you're looking at it, and you can see there's also a new kind of plot now. Like before we had in this example, we had a point mark, and now new in chart 3D is surface plot, where you can have like a surface instead of a line. And that's Swift charts, which makes a lot of sense with VisionOS. Looking at 3D charts in VisionOS, you can like look from the side to see one 2D chart, or the other side to see another 2D chart, and it's like you can see all kinds of shapes in there, which there are even textures added, so you can really create nice charts in 3D. Especially nice to look at in VisionOS, but you can also like turn around inside iOS and stuff, so it makes sense there too. Speaking about VisionOS, this is our next big topic, which is where we're going to talk about widgets, which were mostly related to VisionOS. There were changes elsewhere too, but nearby sharing, which is new, spatial media, which and APMP, those are related, which is really significantly improved this year. So let's start with SwiftUI though, because we're just talking about SwiftUI. And there are a lot of kinds of new APIs that are related to VisionOS, as you can see here. And one of them is shown here. Imagine you have some kind of view and you're making it resizable using a model 3D, which has been introduced last year. And you're asking yourself, like, why is this stretched and why does it look like that? And you can already see here there are some borders, which is added with debug border 3D. We'll come back to that in a minute. But what the simple fix would be this year with a new SwiftUI property is scale to fit 3D. Scale to fit is something we had in 2D, and now it works in 3D as well. Another addition is depth alignment, which you can add to your VStack layout, HStack layout, etc. That can make sure that when you, as you can see on the bottom, there is some window added to this 3D model, which is in the robot name card. Usually it will be at the very back because it's like the flat, like the zero, Z-stack position. But now you can say like, okay, I want to actually position it in the center compared to the model. And there's also some new API called Spatial Container, where you can position even better or in more detail by saying something like drop trailing back. And another really cool thing that was totally missing when you were using Vision or designing interactive UIs and using 3D models in SwiftUI on VisionOS was spatial overlays were not possible that easy. And now you can just say spatial overlay. We'll just place it above your I think it's a reality view even, or model 3D, and it works just like this. You just say where to align it and it just stays where it needs to stay. Then this is the cool debug border 3D thing. If you want to basically debug your view and just figure out why is this place there and not where I expected, you can now create a helper function that is completely shown here using Z-Stack and the new rotation 3D layout, which basically rotates the layout by some degree you pass to it. And if you just add this code to your project, you're going to have a very nice time debugging any layouting issues with 3D. So just copy and paste it and off you go. You can see the usage here, where you can see like this thing turned around 45 degrees and you see the bounding box, you see everything nicely aligned, and yeah, it's going to save us so much time. And you can even say is dashed if you want to have a specific dashed version. Then what happened all the time on VisionOS is that sometimes you were having a window that appeared on App Start because in the last session of the user, they opened a specific state of your app, and then it was weird when you started the app that you didn't get like the first page or something like that, and it was not easy or sometimes even possible to control that. Now it's way easier with new default launch behavior.suppressed and restoration behavior disabled. So you can basically say for like secondary windows, restoration behavior, we don't want this window to restore because now Windows restore automatically, which is awesome. And default launch behavior, basically you can say when you launch the app, it should always be suppressed. And these additions are really nice to see, and you can really see the focus also on SwiftUI, on VisionOS. A lot of things have been improved. There were maybe a lot of gaps, but I would say because it's a new system with a new kind of UI, it makes sense that a lot of things were missing and that there's still, probably still today, things that should get added over time. So I'm even expecting to get a lot of additions next year at next WWDC, but it shows that Apple is still focused on VisionOS, and this is not a joke. This is a huge thing for them. And I'm really still invested into spatial development with all the things that we've seen now. I love it. Let's continue to the next things, because we have a lot of more things, and this is related to widgets. This is not specifically VisionOS, but now in widgets, because we have this new liquid glass and clear design and this, clear look. There are actually different modes for images inside widgets. So if you have an image in the widget, you now can specify if it should be shown in full color, accented mode, which by the way is a mode that might be the only possible mode in some watchOS configurations. So you should definitely play around with desaturated and accented desaturated if they look good for your widget and your imagery in there. And now we're getting to VisionOS, the restoration behavior I was talking about, because I've been requesting this forever, but you can see the widgets here now stay at place, and you can even have it in different rooms. So you can finally pin windows or widgets to your walls, and they just stay there. Even if you restart your device, it will just figure out that you're in the same room and just put it where you put it last time. Finally, the VisionOS system is making this AR hardware also an AR software, which I've been requesting forever, so I'm really happy we are finally seeing this. And even if you have like volumes, like a real 3D object, you can now automatically magnetically pin it onto horizontal surfaces. So if you have like a table, you can just pin it there and it will stay there. And if you have a window or something like that, you can pin it to the wall. And this whole scene will restore automatically unless you specify explicitly, okay, this window should not be restored. Like we just saw in the code before, you just disable the restoration behavior, like which would make sense for these tools window that you can see here, but the scene you might probably want to keep. The widgets have different sizes, and there is even an extra large size, both portrait and landscape, which I really love because I have this posters app that you might have seen on VisionOS, and they basically introduced this extra large for my app, I think. So I really love that. This is an example of the poster, so it can look like something like this, or in my app it's just going to be a poster, I mean a widget. In my app it's going to be like a movie poster that updates automatically. And yeah, definitely make sure to check out my posters app in a few months from now, and it should be in there because I'm going to adopt this API for sure. Then we have supported families, so you can basically say which sizes you support, which is here the extra large only, which I'm going to use in my posters app. And you can also, you have to basically consider that users can resize any widget from 75% to 125%. So they have some play there in the size. So make sure to, make your UI look good, even if it's a bit smaller or larger than the normal default size. And the widgets can be either normal framed or inerted. So make sure that when they're that you specify, if it doesn't make sense to like put them inside the wall, that you just specify elevated as the possible mounting styles. And another thing that is new on VisionOS specific also for widgets is when you come close to a widget, I think it's up to 1.9 meters right now, it basically changes the UI. So you can specify if you're like in the level of detailed simplified or not simple. Simplified is if you're far away. So you can make your text larger or have some less details in there, or completely change your UI if your app, for your app that makes sense. So for example, in my posters app, I might actually just show interaction buttons if you're close to it, and farther away, I don't know. I'll play around with it, but we have this level of detail API now. And like I said, you see, like I have posters in my room everywhere. Like you don't see most of my posters because they're like in front of me, on the left of me, but I love this. And I actually finally am going to be able to fill my whole home with my posters app, like with auto updating movie posters. And I'm really excited that we have this both for Windows and for widgets. So you don't even have to use the widgets API. You can just use Windows. If your like app reopens automatically, which the user can adjust in their settings, when it was open in the last session, it will just reopen and it will just be placed at the same place where it was before. So yeah, Apple listened. I'm really happy. But there's more to VisionOS. We have this environment blending component now, where you can basically say, I have this 3D element or this 3D whatever in my app, and I want it to be just part of the room. Like, I don't know if IKEA was introducing new furniture in some kind of app, and you would just place it in your room. You would want it to blend in with your environment, right? You would like when something is in front of it to look like it's behind it. And this is exactly now possible with the environment blending component. And we also have the image presentation component. So we can now present finally spatial photos, spatial scenes inside our own apps, which I think was not easy to do or even not possible before. And it's now built into the image presentation component. Not only that, now we're getting also the 3D-ification treatment from the Photos app. So in the Photos app previously, you could like get any 2D image, make it 3D, and look at it. And now we can use it programmatically in our apps as well. I love this because the Photos app, like you could not multi-select, for example, and do it for all the images at once. And there were so many, like, it was also a bit hard to reach and stuff like that. So I'm really amazed that we can do it with any app. So whatever app you have, you maybe, I don't know, even social media apps could now just say, okay, you have a 2D image, you just press a 3D button and you can see any photo in 3D. And with the new parallax effect, it's also really, really awesome with the AI generated background or the fill-in that they're doing now. And we have access to this API. Awesome. Thank you, Apple. So I think this is the right direction. If Apple introduces new APIs, which are really cool user features. They should be available for developers too, at least in next year, and that's exactly what happened here, which I really like. And yeah, please continue like that, giving us foundation models, giving us the 3Dification as a feature, because we can use that in our apps to create new experiences that are great for users. Last but not least, okay, this is not last yet, we're still not done with other sections, but we have finally sharing nearby on VisionOS. So if two people are in the same room with two Vision Pro devices, they can now use basically an app or whatever, or some kind of experience, a game, inside the same room and see the same thing at the same location. And you can even combine that with FaceTime, which is what this slide is showing here. In FaceTime, when you call someone, the VisionOS system will automatically try to fit those other people, which you can see as kind of ghosts here, into the gaps between the real people that are in the room. So you can do sharing nearby and FaceTime at the same time. When you do this, you can now add windows that are placed at the position of the people that are wearing the devices. So for example, if you had a playing card game, you could do some UI where everyone sees only their playing cards. So yeah, you don't get spoiled the other people. I don't know how it's going to work when they walk around, but maybe you can do it so everyone can only see their window. But if you want both to see one shared experience, what's also new now is that you can have multiple windows in a shared experience. For example, you can open an introduction video and it will be placed at the same location. And the API for that is basically using a group activity association primary. It's basically shown here. And yeah, that's how you can have multiple window support inside SharePlay. And I think this is going to open up the possibilities in the future when Apple introduces a cheaper and lighter device. Because right now, how many people are going to have multiple devices at home? Maybe at a conference you can show off or something like that with other people you see. But at real world situations, I can only imagine businesses that can really afford that and that can make these things work. But I would love to see this with consumers. And for that, we need a cheaper and lighter device that more people can buy. And then we can play games, we can do whatever, many, many different kinds of experiences inside Apple Vision, whatever it's called at then. But there's more. And this is something I'm really excited about. Finally, inside the Vision Pro, you can just watch 180 degree, 360 degree, and now newly added wide FOV videos that come from other cameras or other sources, and just watch them inside either Photos or Quick Look or any kind of third-party app without having to download a specific app that is a media player for these kinds of content. That's something I had to do all the time, and now finally I can just watch them. And how it works is if you have one of these officially supported devices, then you just can convert it to an Apple supported format inside the Vision Pro. You don't even have to get to your Mac or install the software. It just asks you, do you want to convert? You just convert it. And the format it converts it to is called MVHEVC, which is HEVC is a common format, and it's high efficient video codec, and MV stands for multi-view. And what it does is it looks at because the left and right image to make a view 3D, they are quite similar, but they have some differences, and it uses this similarity to basically compress the images even further, which also helps with performance when during playback. And yeah, that's basically what this conversion does. It is create an MVHEVC file. And this conversion can also be done on macOS. So if you want to prepare your content up front, you can use the tool AVConvert, which on macOS Tahoe. So you have to be on macOS 26 to use this AVConvert feature, but then you can convert up front. Or what you can also do is during, in your app, when you open a file that is not in APMP yet, you can tell basically your app this is this APMP kind of format, and we'll try to do the playback live. At least that's what I understood. And the other option you have is to basically write a script or an app, and they also have a sample app in the talk that is linked here, where you basically pass a file and it will output the file from an app basically, so you don't have to use AVConvert. These are some recommendations from Apple. So if you are interested in creating 3D content, which I am doing right now, by the way, for a new app. So these values were really relevant for me. Here are basically the resolution recommendations. I was actually surprised a bit because the Apple TV content looks so high quality compared to other 8K footage I've seen that I thought they were actually filming and shipping those in 16K. But they say here that it's recommended for stereoscopic content to have 4,320 pixels per eye. And yeah, that's probably what they're shipping, but like they recommend 2K at 90 FPS. And I can't imagine that their content is 2K 90 FPS. So I'm pretty sure these values are on the conservative side and you can actually go a little bit above that. And yeah, I'll figure it out and try to come up with the best values here. But this is the official recommended values. And these things with the video are going to be a game changer, in my opinion, for the Vision Pro, because the most compelling experience that people were having when they tried my Apple Vision Pro, and I have like 60 different people try it because everyone was interested, like, well, what is this device? And everyone was so impressed by Apple's like 3D immersive videos. While Apple Immersive is like a different format that includes like really expensive camera hardware and stuff like that, you can get relatively close to it with the new APMP stuff. And I think this is the kind of content that we're missing to make this device more useful. And I think once it gets a little cheaper in some future iteration, the content will matter. And this APMP format and all the tooling around it will make it really easy to like create APMP files. And because APMP files are supported out of the box in all Apple's APIs, integrated into apps. And I think I myself am going to write an app myself for like exploring Tokyo, because Tokyo, as you can see maybe from my background, is a city I really love. And I've actually gone there and recorded a lot of 3D content with an 180-degree camera, which I couldn't play natively on the Vision OS software before, and also couldn't integrate into an app natively with native players. But now I can, and I'm going to definitely do it. So look out for my app in the future. But let's get to platform features, because we have new APIs, new frameworks that are going to enable entirely new experiences on all Apple devices. And start with AlarmKit, then we will go to Wi-Fi Aware, go into Game Center and App Intents last. So what is AlarmKit? Did you know that no third-party app could actually send an alarm or create an alarm app because you couldn't break through like focus mode and stuff like that before, and now finally you can. So there will be a lot of third-party apps, I'm pretty sure, by September this year that are going to use and adopt this API. And yeah, it's pretty easy to use. If you want to just show a dismiss, you just create an alarm attributes and pass it to alarm configuration. If you want to support more like a snooze kind of feature, it's a bit more involved. You have to create a button, you have to pass it along. And actually, if you do create snooze, you also have to handle all these different states, or these are basically the states that are going to happen. So your alarm on fire, and then you get the UI presenter, then you snooze it, and then you have to update the countdown UI. So it's a bit more involved if you do this. But the most important thing is if you go into, okay, I have to go one further. If you go into actually doing the snoozing feature, then you have to provide a live activity for your app as well. So if you're thinking about creating an alarm-based app, you have to adopt the live activity API as well. And this is basically part of how it could look like. But of course, when you do something like this and you want to break through focus mode and stuff like that, you have to tell the user and request authorization, so the user can always choose not to allow your app to break through. Yeah, so you can't do it like without the user's consent. And as you can see here as well, there is like integration with pausing. There are like states like paused and continue. And yeah, all of these things you have to implement if you do a snoozable alarm app. We can also see that you can pass a sound. So this is actually something where I thought about, I've tried actually to implement an adhan app. I don't know, like for Islamic prayers, they're like 5 times prayers a day. And that kind of app was just not possible before, because even if you send like a push notification to like play a sound, it was like restricted and stuff like that. I feel like with AlarmKit, finally we can implement this the proper way, and a lot of other apps that are already out there might actually just be able to adopt this. So I'm really happy that we can get more nicer alarm apps and also more kinds of experiences that were just not possible before, but people actually wanted. Let's talk about another API that has different kinds of use cases like media streaming, high-speed transfer, all the things you can see here, which is Wi-Fi aware. So what is Wi-Fi aware? It is a secure and very performant way or replacement or communication thing that is very similar to Bluetooth. So if you know Bluetooth, Wi-Fi aware works very similarly, but it's more secure, more performant, and it can connect to way more devices at the same time. The way you connect, or the way it works, is there is always a publisher and subscriber. So if you've ever worked with Bluetooth, this is really very similar. And there are like two steps involved into making Wi-Fi aware or using Wi-Fi aware. The first step is pairing. It's very similar to Bluetooth pairing, and the pairing happens like this. As you can see on the screen, there's like a code, and you can connect from iPhone to iPhone, you can connect from iPhone to other Wi-Fi over Android devices, or any kinds of devices. That can be like hardware devices that you want to connect to. There are two modes. One is bulk mode, the other one is one is performant mode, the other one is like a background mode. And the difference is that one is like higher power, lower power versus higher latency, lower latency. So you should choose the one that fits your needs. But in any case, what really makes this nice is that once you have paired two devices together, the connection is really easy. So you can connect, like you can pair two devices together. Imagine AirPods with iPhone. This is pretty much the technology Apple has been using internally, I'm assuming, because you can now create like a AirPods kinds of thing with your iPhone, connect it, like pair it once, and from there the iPhone can easily connect back as long as it's within reach. The reach can also be higher than Bluetooth, which is just a few meters, but you can go way farther with Wi-Fi. And I think this is going to enable a lot of more hardware devices, but you can also use it if you have some kind of, for example, they mentioned as an example, you want to share your screen or something like that. So you can do a lot of local experiences that were not possible due to basically the Bluetooth not being performant enough. And this is going to be, really cool, I think, for some app ideas or gaming ideas that were not possible before. Let's get to Game Center, which gets two new features from a developer's perspective. We can have challenges and activities now. Challenges are basically leaderboards that the users can create with time limited and only invited people. So it's like a mini leaderboard for like a specific thing or a specific period and just a specific people. And basically the API used for that is if you already have implemented leaderboards into your app, you don't have to do anything, and your app supports challenges out of the box, or at least the submit API is already implemented. The activity is also connected to leaderboard and challenge because it's basically something like a deep link into a specific level or experience in your app. And you can do it either through a leaderboard or challenge. You can also do it through an achievement, or just share a party code that you can then basically use for multiplayer connection from your own server-based implementation if you have something like that. And the way it works is, for example, here when you have a challenge, you can have a deep link using an activity that goes directly to the specific level or whatever this challenge is about. And then users can players can start playing that level to get basically into the challenge. Another really cool thing for people who have considered or have been using Game Center is the new GameKit bundle feature. So basically what you do is you go to macOS, you go to Xcode, and you create a GameKit bundle, add it to your app. And the way it works is very similar to actually how StoreKit configuration files worked, where testing of in-app purchases was really complicated before. Now with the StoreKit configuration file, you can just test locally. And this is the same thing for Game Center. You can even create new data here. It will just sync to App Store Connect, which is really awesome. And you can see here how basically you can also, during development, you can open this game progress manager, and inside the manager, when you go into your app and you, I don't know, made some points and create a leaderboard, or play the game and get a new data in the leaderboard, you can see it live here locally without ever going to App Store Connect and through production data. And you can reset it, you can adjust it, you can do whatever you want. You can see and test way better, which I really love, because Game Center testing was really like a black box. You were hoping things work as expected, or you were actually sending production data, and it was a mess, and now it's much, much better. So I really love the changes to Game Center. I think this is going to help developers test Game Center and understand Game Center way better and be more confident in shipping Game Center experiences. So if you've seen an app that has Game Center integration, but it was buggy because it was probably because it was so hard to test, and now it's going to improve. So I'm thinking that a lot of Game Center enabled apps are going to have less bugs in the future. Last but not least, let's get to snippets. And there are two new kinds of intents now. The first intent style is a result intent that you can use directly inside like snippets. I think this is when you even integrate in Spotlight and stuff. And you can also have confirmation snippets. So if you ask to do something, you can basically get asked for a confirmation. They might also be integrated into not only Spotlight, but also into the Shortcuts app. And you can support both of these, but there is also another kind of intent, which is semantic content descriptor based for visual intelligence. So when users take a screenshot or take a photo and then just circle some part of that screenshot, your app can actually integrate with that and say, get some information and look something up. And the way this works is you implement you get a semantic content descriptor in which you can find the pixel buffer of the region the user has circled, and then you can do whatever action your app does, like look up some kind of image and provide some intelligence there. There are also additions to app intents with add computed property and add deferred property that are supposed to make usage of app intents or creating them way more convenient. I have to admit, I haven't written many app intents yet, so these just look nice, but I can't really give you an overview about how well or how much easier these are going to make things. What's also new, this is awesome though, is that you can now have app intents and share them through Swift packages and static libraries. So it was possible before in frameworks and dynamic libraries, but now you can finally have it in a Swift package, making the Swift ecosystem way more useful. And how it works is you have to implement a protocol app intents package, and then you can learn more in the get to know app intents session if you want to know the details about this. But this is all about app intents. Like I said, I don't have much experience with it. I've always watched the sessions, and this looks like nice improvements and making things more convenient. But what is now my final verdict of the WWDC of 2025? Okay, so last year actually I was in San Jose in Cupertino for a nice, great WWDC, and it was an awesome experience because I was there with all the other developers and we were all excited. But I have to admit, when the platform State of the Union happened, where we saw all the new additions to the APIs and stuff, I was actually quite disappointed last year because we were expecting some kind of AI models like foundation model. I was personally expecting at least one new framework that is really useful to many developers. And we did get a new framework, which was TabletopKit, but that was very specific to VisionOS and table games, and it was also not very well documented, so it was kind of hard to use. So I had a feeling we didn't get too much last year from the developer perspective, and Swift Assist being like a promise and not coming. So last year felt like a little bit of a disappointment. And this year, I would say the overall topic were two. The first topic I will talk about is unification. So the whole possibilities and existing APIs we can use were more unified. So a lot of things were possible that were not possible on macOS before. Like finally we have a shortcuts app there and stuff like that. So macOS has become more capable. And also iPadOS has become more capable with like background task APIs and stuff like that. So things are getting more consistent, and especially VisionOS is getting a lot of things that it was missing, filling a lot of gaps. So I think this is a really good year in that regard. And the other thing is that a lot of promises or expectations, at least, that developers were having for last year, they finally arrived this year. So we have foundation models, we have a completely new framework with AlarmKit, and we have so many other convenience APIs that I think this year is a relatively good year. So like compared to years like 2014, where we got Swift as a completely new language, or 2019, where we got SwiftUI as a completely new UI design, UI framework, it can't beat those years, I would say. But compared to other years, I think this is one of the good years that we had this year. And I, as a developer, am happy, and I want to dig into a lot of these APIs and use them, especially foundation models. This is I would say, the most awesome API that we got this year. And it also has the potential of being as big as Swift or SwiftUI. But because we're missing the larger models or the private cloud compute connection, I think this may happen sometime in the future. But for now, I think overall, I'm quite happy. I felt also that the focus this year was a lot on VisionOS, which I personally really liked because this is a new platform and it was missing a lot of things. And I really like that they continued a lot of things there. And they figured out also the persistence problem there that they were having for a true AR device. And I always said it's only a software problem, and they solved it now, finally this year, which I really like. One thing I noticed though is that in the entire sessions of this year's WWDC developer sessions, there was not a single session about tvOS. So no what's new in tvOS, no, I don't know, authentication, whatever in tvOS. There was a mention in some of these sessions, but nothing's really new. And I see this as a sign that Apple is actually working on something new there. So they don't want to invest any time or any engineering in tvOS because something new is going to come in there. And there have been rumors, I don't want to speculate here, but I'm seeing the sign at least that tvOS is not getting any love this year. So something else must be getting love elsewhere. And I'm really looking forward to this. That makes me excited. And I think that's all I have for now. So yeah, this was a new kind of video for me. This was my first time. If you liked it, really make sure to like it and to subscribe to my channel. If I see the numbers go high, I will definitely consider doing more videos like this in the future. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I hope you had a great WWDC and we'll have nice weeks of learning in the future. See you around. Thank you. Bye.